Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to our final show of the Sports Crib for 2021. Welcome everyone. We have a good Thursday night game on tonight for first place in the AFC West, and it looks like right now the Chiefs are trying to avenge that loss at the hands of the Chargers earlier this season. Uh, I know I saw Mr. Hayes in here a little bit earlier, but I do see Mr. Carroll. Mr. Carroll, how you doing tonight?
Well, I have had a very interesting 2021, as I guess many of us have, and I'm close to sort of putting the finishing touches or wrapping it up in a bow, whatever term you want to use. And this will be a big part of it. I've had an interesting time. Is it 2 years? How long have I been on your show now, James? Two and a half?
Wow, it's been much longer than that.
Has it been? Wow. Okay.
Maybe three, more like three.
Maybe three. Yeah, maybe three. Wow. And in that time, a lot has happened in my life and a lot has happened in the world. And obviously, I'm in the process of writing a story about the changing landscape of high stakes recruiting and, of course, HBCUs and how they're making an impact in a way that I guess some people didn't expect, and some people are very salty. In fact, about the impact that HBCUs have suddenly made in the recruiting landscape of big time college football. But so yeah, there's a lot for me to write about, a lot going on. Bowl games are coming. I've been trying to do all my previews of bowl games and put an end on, put a sort of bow on my actual work that people pay me to do, in addition to all the stuff I do in the world of like football media and draft and all of this stuff.
But I don't quite understand that because a lot of your Hall of Famers, Shannon Sharp, Deacon
Oh,
Jones.
right. I mean, Jackson State by itself has three
Yeah.
Hall of Famers, right? Mississippi Valley State, if you want to give them credit for one half of Deacon Jones and obviously Jerry Rice. Grambling has a bunch of Hall of Famers.
Yeah, I mean,
People wouldn't realize it, but Grambling, right, has more Pro Football Hall of Famers than Notre Dame, right? Most people wouldn't guess that. There's a bunch of Pro Football Hall of Famers from the HBCUs. Now, obviously, most of them were guys that went there in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. But even into the 70s and 80s, you still had guys like Robert Brazil. You had guys like Walter Payton. You had guys like Jackie Slater. You had guys like
yeah, that's what I mean. There was a time when any pro scout that was worth his salt had to go through the HBCU circuit for scouting. I mean, Mr. Hayes, how are you doing this evening?
Hey James, how's it going?
Hey, uh, Don, I'm breaking a promise that I made to myself 5 years ago, and I will be spending Christmas in Texas.
Really?
Yes, I'll be in the Dallas Fort Worth area,
Oh, good.
visiting a friend for Christmas. Um,
oh,
so yeah, it's like the return to Texas, Don. Hey, and strangely enough, my flight stops at Austin. So so I will be spending a few hours in Austin also. So
Well, good.
but yeah, I had to go, of course, and break out my winter coat. They tell me you have some winds down there, a little chilly. So I got
not by Chicago standards, you don't have chilliness or
no,
wind,
no, no,
but
no, no.
okay.
Well, not even by Pittsburgh standards, but you know, you have to remember, I haven't worn a winter coat since 2003 when I moved
God, I
out
hate
here
you right
from
now.
since I moved out here from Pittsburgh. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you guys a funny story, and guys that'll live in cold weather will appreciate this. When I came out here to San Diego, I bought a triple goose down jacket with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept this coat for 3 years, from 2003 to 2006, because I couldn't give it away. I couldn't give it to a homeless person. Okay. Finally, a year, 2 years ago, I met a guy that was moving back east, and I was finally able to give away this triple down goose jacket. In Pittsburgh, it would have been, I could have just thrown it out and somebody would have grabbed it.
If you had walked down the street, unzipped it, and done this with it, somebody would have taken it out of your hand. You've been free of it within 27 seconds.
So Don, I guess your season is over. How did things turn out for your football season there? I think you guys played for the championship.
Well, no, we got beat in the second round of the playoffs.
Okay.
But we actually had the best record we've had in the 5-year history of the school. We're still a young school. We've only had 2 graduating classes. So we went from 0-10 5 years ago to 11-2 this year.
Wow. Okay. That's Texas football for you, though. So let's kind of get into some of these things here. Of course, I think, did I start out with college football?
Yep, you did, I believe.
Yes, I did. And I started out with Texas A&M. Finally, numbers as far as the recruitment rankings, they finally surpassed Alabama as the number 1 recruiting class. Don, what did you think about that? I mean, Texas A&M, even you guys did pretty good there at Texas too. But what were your thoughts when you heard this?
Well, let's just be clear about one thing. Right now, they have the number 1 recruiting class. That can change in February.
It will change
because there's still some good players available. I'm going to tell you what's really shook things up is the whole NIL. Texas was not getting any commitments from any offensive linemen. They came up with this charity thing called Heart of a Champion or something like that, and it guarantees every scholarship lineman $50,000. And all of a sudden, UT has a couple of 5 stars, a couple of 4 stars. I think they signed 6 linemen. They're still in the running for the number 1 offensive lineman in California. Yep. So, in A&M got the number 1 quarterback in Texas. They got the number 1 tight end in the nation. They got the number 1 receiver in the nation today. And so their NIL, their boosters came through for them also.
What did you think about the coup put on by Deion there, Bill? Of course.
Well, I've been hearing rumors about this.
That wasn't really a coup.
I was hearing rumors about this for a couple of days prior to it happening. So partially because Deion had been dropping little hints, and partially because I know people who know people. So I heard that this was probably what was coming. Some people say he's the number 1. Some people say he's the number 2 player in the signing class. Whatever number you want to slap on him, he's a guy that's drawing comparisons. Mr. Hunter has drawn comparisons. Travis Hunter has drawn comparisons to people like Charles Woodson, Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie. He's done comparisons to Malcolm Jenkins, right? He's a guy that people think could be a pretty good wide receiver if he stayed on offense, but people think he's going to be an elite level corner who could eventually even become a free safety later in his career. He has size, he has speed, he has instincts, he has hands like a receiver. He probably would be a really good return specialist as well, based on what I've seen from his high school tape. He formed a relationship with Deion Sanders. And though people are saying money, and I'm not saying money didn't play a part in it, but he and Deion Sanders formed a relationship. They got to know each other a little bit. And Deion Sanders, for whatever you'll say about him, is a charmer, first of all. From what I mean, he might fit my particular taste, but I've heard recruits say that he's really good,
Rumor is if he sits down at your table, you're going wherever he wants you to go.
I'm understanding. And once again, right? I mean, Chuck Amato and Bobby Bowden. I mean, those are the guys that brought him into Florida State. Those are two of the masterclass recruiters. Chuck Amato and Bobby Bowden. I mean, that's like saying I took psychology from Freud. It's like saying I took botany from George Washington Carver, right? If you looked at those guys as recruiters, Chuck Amato, who was the defensive coordinator at the time that Deion went to Florida State, and of course the closer, the ultimate closer in college football in that era, Bobby Bowden. If he took 1% of what those guys had to give in terms of how to be a recruiter, he should be a pretty darn good recruiter. But he talks to this young man who some people think is going to be an elite level cornerback and says, how would you like to be the best cornerback football's ever seen? Because I can teach you that, right? Who else can say that? There's nobody at Alabama who can say that. There's nobody at USC who can say that. There's nobody at Miami who can say that. Who else is a person that many people consider the best corner in the history of the football, right? And is recruiting you. Nobody else can replicate that. So lots of schools can hook up NIL deals. All of them can, in fact, nowadays can hook up NIL deals. None of them can send Deion Sanders except Jackson State to recruit.
Very true. Now, Don, you mentioned something about the linesmen. Each one signing was an NIL deal, and they get 50,000. But Texas did pretty well in recruiting, also.
They did.
It wasn't all because of the NIL deal.
No, it was. Sarkisian has a great reputation as developing talent. He when he calls offensive plays, he gets his playmakers involved. He's kind of considered a quarterback guru with his work with, Nick Saban and Pete Carroll. So those are two coaches that he learned from. Of course, he played under Bill Young at BYU, with Norm Chow, that offense. So, from college to his from as a college player to college coach, he's had instructions from legends, and he has a great relationship with the Manning family. That's why Arch Manning is considered a favorite to land at Texas when it's his time. So, I would say that Texas, as far as a class, probably has the best defensive line class signed, and probably the best offensive line class signed. And that's where Texas is really hurting this year. Texas could put points on the board, but they couldn't play defense. Well, now they got some a guy named Justice Finkley out of Alabama. He stole him out of Saban's backyard, and he's expected to play as a freshman. He looks like a man-child, so it's good for Texas.
Now, Don, what about the impact of losing your running back coach to go get his dream job at Temple?
Well, one of the marks of a staff is a good staff is when other colleges come to poach it. Yep. So that's not actually a bad sign. Steve Drayton's had a reputation as a good recruiter. I'm not sure how Texas will replace him, but Sark knows people. So one thing that happens a lot at colleges in Texas, they will hire a high school coach that comes from a winning program and has relationships with the kids and make him a position coach. So he might go the high school route. He might go grab, let's say, David Wetzel at Baylor. He's an analyst at Baylor. He's a pretty good guy. We've known the Wetzels for a long time. So, there's a lot of possibilities that could, fit into that position.
Don, we talked about, I don't think you were here last week when we talked about who was the high school coach that got hired up north here recently.
Joey McGuire?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys, like you said, you don't seem to mind, pulling a guy from, that's been a high school name or a famous high school coach there in Texas and giving him a try at the collegiate level. I would imagine his recruiting stock would be out of off the chain, as they say.
Mhm.
Talking about the guy at Texas Tech.
Yeah, Joey McGuire.
Yeah, yeah.
Good
So,
McGuire.
so
You also have Jeff Traylor at UTSA. He was a high school coach in Texas also.
Yep, a legendary high school coach, terrific high school coach. Yeah, I mean that was Art Briles, right? Art Briles was the guy who parlayed his success. Texas is very open. The state, not just the school, but the state is very open to elevating terrific high school coaches either into coordinator or sometimes even directly into coaching. I mean, head coaching. Probably not at Texas, but you could go right from being a great high school coach to being the head man at UTSA or the head man at North Texas or some places. And then you can parlay that into eventually maybe moving on to Texas.
Bill, give us a little more in depth about Mr. Drayton and his aspirations there at Temple.
Okay, so Temple has become kind of a stepping stone job. I mean, look at some of the guys who've recently coached at Temple: Matt Rule, Steve Adazio. I mean, I go back to Bruce Arians, right? I remember when Bruce Arians was the coach there, and amongst his players was Todd Bowles, right? I remember watching Todd Bowles play for Temple under Bruce Arians. So the head coaching job there is a job that very often can lead to other things. A lot of guys have gone on to have success. I'm extremely happy for Stan Drayton. One, I mean, because it improves a terrible number, right? But prior to his hire, we were at 9.23% of FBS head coaches being African American. He now gets us to a nice clean 10%, right? At least we get to a nice, at least you don't have to use point anything. So now we're at 10%. Still, the number is not great, but at least we're at 10%. We're in double digits, right? We were at 9.23. Now we're at 10. So that's the first thing. He's 50, but he's a young 50, for lack of better putting it. A really good recruiter, a guy who has connections to the athletic director at Temple, a man named Arthur Johnson. They've worked together before. So he steps in for Rod Carey, and Rod Carey went 12-20, so I understand it. It makes sense to move on from him. And then Manny Diaz, of course, was, right, the coach. They were really, this is a real stepping stone job if you think about it. Temple's helped a lot of people to get other jobs. But he's coached running backs. He's a good recruiter. He spent 5 years in the NFL, so he knows the NFL landscape. He's been in and around the Philadelphia area in his time at Penn. He was a running back coach at University of Pennsylvania. He also coached running backs at Villanova. So he's familiar with the landscape of Philadelphia, my city of city of brotherly shove, right, where I was born, in Hahnemann Hospital. So what I will say is that other people they were probably considering for the job include Fran Brown, who had been a Temple assistant in the past, and most recently was the Rutgers secondary coach, and a few other people I've heard were sort of in the running. And Temple is now hired its second black head coach, Ron Dickinson, back probably 20 plus years ago, was the first black head coach they had there. They would like to get back to a bowl game. They went to 5 straight bowl games from 2015 to 2019, and then have missed bowling in the last couple of years. So my assumption is that maybe not immediately, but soon he'll get them back to being a bowl team. Once again, watch for the running back position to get stronger. They've had some running backs that were good there in the past, but look for them to get better at that position, even though he's going to be a head coach, just like, Saban becomes a DB coach, right? Certain times of the year when they're about to play Auburn, when they're about to play certain teams, he spends a lot of time in that DB room. I expect that certain times of the year you'll be seeing Coach Drayton spend time with the running backs as well.
Don, your second favorite quarterback, uh, Mr. Tom Brady, has invested in the his own brand, which he's using basically to fund and promote NIL players. Two of his players happen to be, and maybe that's why Demetrius is not here tonight. I don't know, but anyway, but I would have loved to have Mike here. I was hoping that Mike would be able, because he's not going to be here Saturday. But two of the guys that he's funding, they oddly enough are the quarterback for Michigan and the quarterback for Jackson State. Don, what does that tell you? I mean, do you think we are looking at another Lamar Jackson down there at Jackson State? We've already shored up that defense with that recruiting down there, but Tom has to see something in these guys. Of course, the other guy can't say that much. I mean, Tom did go to the University of Michigan, so I mean, we can read as much into that as you want. But what's your thoughts? Do you think we're going to see more of these quarterbacks? Maybe some athletes on the DB side. You think we're going to see more of these star athletes investing in these college guys?
Could well be. I mean, the thing is, if you're a starting quarterback like Brady in the NFL, you can put money and invest in these guys. I mean, it's we're probably not that far away from basically college is like minor league football attached to a school. We have free agency now. We have NIL. I could see NFL players like being owners of certain kids. I mean, just like I have. Okay. So, and maybe Bill can feel it better, but it's like having a team in NASCAR. Where you have different drivers and you have a team. I think it's kind of like that, maybe. Does that sound right? Bill, do you know anything about NASCAR? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So in NASCAR, right, you have sponsors that get to slap their sticker or whatever it is on the vehicle, and even sometimes patches on the driver themselves. And who knows? Maybe we'll get to that point where you get to actually put patches on the uniform. But I mean, both of you know that without calling it that, things like this have been going on forever. I read Meat on the Hoof by Gary Shaw, who played for, right? You know the book I'm talking about, for Jericho Royal. There were guys getting, I guess it was $20 handshakes after good games, in 1959. Eventually it became $50 handshakes, and then probably by the 1980s, $100 handshakes, I guess. But now this is just a better, cleaner, and more above board way to do that, right? So if you're a business owner, as opposed to, having somebody drop a bag of cash at somebody's house or giving them a handshake and sliding a palm, a bill into their palm or whatever, now you have a legitimate way of saying, I want to invest in you. I want you to be able to represent, right? I'm an alum of this school, represent my car dealership, my HVAC company, my cupcake company, whatever the heck it is that you do. I want to be able to invest in you. And this relationship you're establishing while they're still an undergraduate can grow, especially if they continue to be a good football player, into a relationship that you have with them as a professional. It's something that, frankly, if college football was less short-sighted, they would have started doing years ago, right? The issue isn't that NIL is now a big thing. The issue is that that they were so slow to realize what it should have been all along. And they're playing catch-up, right? The college football, the NCAA, resisted this thing that clearly could not be resisted, and then finally said, "Oh, all right." But now they're playing catch-up. Now they're trying to figure out how to fit in with this thing that was inevitable, that was clearly coming all along. There's been money in college football since since the 20s.
yeah.
I mean, since the 20s.
Yeah,
I mean, people were coming up to Red Grange in 1925, right? And saying, hey, come by my business and we'll give you a free coat or whatever the heck it is, right? Whatever they did back in 1925. This is nothing new. The only new part is it being above board and being regulated and being somewhat, like I said, so that you can sort of see it. It's transparent now, as opposed to some shady backroom thing, which is what it was for the last darn near 100 years.
Yeah, I had a thought kind of run through when you were saying that. What's the car company that Tom has his commercial? What car is that? It's not a BMW. It's what is it? Come on, Bill.
Is it a foreign company? Is it Audi? Is it Saab? Is it Mercedes?
It's a top brand that Tom does his
Jaguar, Tesla. I mean, what country? What country it's from?
I believe it's English. No, I believe it's
English.
If
it's English, it's either Aston Martin or Jaguar, or maybe Rolls.
I think it's Aston Martin. Yeah.
Okay. So Aston Martin's a very nice car.
Yeah.
Very nice. I'll never be able to own one. So nice. But yes, they're very nice.
Can you imagine? These kids. Like walking up. Driving up to school with a brand new one. Like
sure.
Brady on the back.
I mean, just so you know, Eric Dickerson drove up to SMU in a very nice vehicle too. May have been an Aston Martin. But it was a nice ride.
Yeah, well, hey, you could talk about LeBron coming out of high school and all that, but I'm just saying, Tom Brady, like you said, Austin Martin, it's like, you don't get, who else could you have that would endorse you, that you would want? But speaking of endorsements and the paths that players are taking now, of course, being a little biased, Pittsburgh, of course. There's a quarterback that I mentioned in the Heisman race, Mr. Stillwell, and he actually came out pretty well. Of course, he didn't win, but he got, I believe, he came in third. Got plenty of recognition, but he's star one. He's the star quarterback for the University of Pittsburgh. Now, we heard today that the star running back for Michigan State, Mr. Edwards, has decided to opt out of this game and go into the NFL draft.
Wait, are you talking about Kenneth Walker?
I mean, Kenneth Walker, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm just making sure I know what we're talking about. Okay, got it.
Well, I'm in Kenneth's running backs for Michigan State. But anyway, Don, what do you think? Is it more important for Stillwell as a quarterback to play in this game and show his talents, being that they're touting him for the first round, or do you think like Kenneth? He should also sit out this game. Is it his stock? Is it any better, or is it going to get any worse because he opts out?
Well, so all my life, I've always believed that you played the game. And when a few years ago, when kids started opting out, I was against it. I was like, that's crazy. But as I've gotten older, start looking at it through clear eyes. If you're going to go in the top 3 rounds of the draft, I would say go ahead and opt out, less you risk injury, because let's put it this way. You've played 11, 12, 13 games, whatever this year. They have enough film on you going back to your freshman, sophomore, junior year. You have nothing else to prove. Your stock is not going to go up or down based on one game. That's a bowl game. it's different if you're in a championship series, but if you're just if you're like in the was it the Poulon Weed Eater Bowl they had a few years ago? Why play that? That's crazy. You should opt out.
Well, what's your thoughts on that, Bill? There's, according to Vegas odds, there's a 4-point swing on whether or not the quarterback plays. Not so
Kenny
much,
Pickett?
right? Not so much on whether or not the
Kenneth
running back
Walker.
plays.
Yeah,
Walker
yeah.
plays.
So Kenneth Walker III has been the engine that makes things go for that offense for Michigan State. And of course, obviously, Kenny Pickett was a Heisman Trophy finalist and a guy that went from being looked as sort of a fourth, maybe third rounder last year if he had declared, which was his first senior year, right? Came back for that extra year because of the COVID-19 exemption and turned himself into a guy who's probably going to go in the first round. And I don't dislike Kenny Pickett as a prospect. Do not get me wrong. But I don't see him as a first rounder. He's a guy that still feels like kind of a second rounder to me. If you're looking for people that I compare him to, I look at him in the same light that I saw players like Jay Fiedler or Matt Schaub, right? I mean, I think he has I think he'll hang around the NFL for a while. I think he's going to have a nice long-ish career, and he may even start for a while. But I don't look at him and think, man, this guy is going to kill it. He doesn't have the same sort of just stuff that a guy like Herbert had, right? Or even a guy like Joe Burrow, though he's a little closer to Burrow than Herbert. He is a guy who is a high-end backup to mid-level starter in my mind. And to me, that doesn't say first round. For me, and maybe it's just me, if I'm taking you in the first 32 picks, I want a guy that's going to go to several Pro Bowls, be an All-Pro a couple of times, and maybe even be in discussion for Hall of Fame, right? Especially early in the first. I'm picky about first rounders, and maybe not everyone is. Maybe I have to just realize that not everyone has the same sort of standards that I have for first rounders. But if I'm taking a guy that early,
when did Jerry Jones pick Dak Prescott?
Fourth round, right? Exactly, that's a fourth rounder. And of course, that was a great
Brady, 6th round pick.
Brady was pick number 199, exactly. And there are guys who were starters who were undrafted, right? I mean, Taylor Heineke was an undrafted free agent. And to me, Pickett is closer to some of those guys we just named than he is to a slam. To me, the top of the first round, especially the quarterback position, I want a guy that is going to be in that sort of Elway, Manning, Marino conversation. I still think he's going to be a solid NFL quarterback. I don't see him as a first round. But in the collegiate level, he's very, very good. He's a top 5 collegiate quarterback this year. But this is not a great quarterback draft, quite frankly. I think it's better than some people think, but it's not a great quarterback draft. I think there'll be 2 or 3 really good starters and a bunch of really good backups, but nobody where you sort of plant your flag and say, well, Carson Strong is as close as I can say. Where I would plant my flag and say, I think this guy is going to be a multiple Pro Bowler and a guy that might make All-Pro a couple of times. For me, that's Carson Strong.
Don, anything you want to add to that before we get on some bowl picks here?
Let's go to the bowls. I have some papers I got to do. So,
okay. The Liberty Bowl, Texas Tech against Mississippi State. What you got, Don?
Mississippi State is going to stump a mud hole in Texas Tech. You got Mike Leach against his former team. And Texas Tech plays terrible defense. And keep in mind, Mississippi State puts points against teams in the SEC. They didn't beat Alabama, but they had some success throwing the ball. They beat A&M and College Station throwing football, and A&M had a very salty defense. A&M would kill Tech, so Mississippi State's going to kill Tech. And it's going to get real it might be one of these, 45-17 games going into the fourth quarter, something like that. There is no love lost between Mike Leach and his old school. They pretty much screwed him over royally. He's their most successful coach, and they fired him because some kid was a pussy. So, Mississippi State's going to, it's going to get bad.
That's why I picked that game. I wanted to see what you say. Go ahead, Bill. Who you got in this game? You might think it's going to be a little closer.
I do think it's going to be a little closer. I don't think it's going to blow it. I do think that Mississippi State wins this game, but blowout I don't see coming. I think it's going to be a really good back and forth game that's probably decided by somewhere between 4 and 10 points. So I guess, gun to my head, 7.5. I think the line on this game is 7 or something like that anyway. And I think that as often is the case that Las Vegas is probably about right.
Don, Oregon against Oklahoma.
Both teams playing without the coaches that they started the season with. I'm gonna go Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma is probably about a 10-point favorite.
Bill.
I don't know about 10 points, but I do think Oklahoma wins this game, and probably by right around one score, to right around a touchdown, I think is what this game will be. Oregon, for them to stay in this game, to make it interesting, Anthony Brown has to run on Oklahoma. He's not a great passer, which is why he was allowed to move on from Boston College. And when they got Jurkovec, speaking of transfers, when Jurkovec came there from Notre Dame, they were able to move on from him because he's not a great passer. He's a guy who's going to be a 57, 58, 59-ish % completion percentage guy. He's not super accurate, but he's a good athlete, right? So he needs to just get out on the edges, and somebody's even right up the middle, and test that ability to play without that numerical advantage, because the advantage of running your quarterback is now it's even, right? Once again, at least a couple of us played defense. I know you were mostly an offensive lineman, I believe. But you know what it means when the quarterback's a runner, right? Now the math is no longer in the defense's favor. And we don't like that, right? We don't like running quarterbacks. And he's not a scrambler. He's a running quarterback. He's likely to be the number 2 rusher for the team, Travis Dye, I guess, unless he's opted out. I don't think he has. But unless Travis Dye's opted out, that'll probably be the leading rusher. But number 2 is probably Brown. If he runs often and runs well, this is going to be a dangerous game. But I'm going to go ahead and take Oklahoma as well.
Pittsburgh, Michigan State. Bill.
Pending whatever it is we're going to hear about whatever's happening, give me Michigan State in a very close game. Though everyone talks about Michigan State as if they're a one-man team, and sometimes even I do it as well, to be perfectly honest, they're not just a one-man team. They have a very good defense. And as both teams, actually Pitt has a couple of guys I like on defense as well. But I like Michigan State's offensive and defensive line a little bit better than I like Pitt's offensive and defensive line. And even without Kenneth Walker, I think you're going to be surprised by how well they run the football. So I'm going to give you Michigan State on this one.
Okay, and of course, New Year's Eve, the Cotton Bowl, Alabama against Cincinnati, and Michigan against Georgia. Bill.
Which game are you talking about?
The Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Alabama, Cincinnati, Michigan, and Georgia.
Well, I mean, I love Cincinnati, but I don't think they're prepared to face Alabama. So, yes, give me Alabama and probably by about 2 touchdowns or so. And then Michigan, Georgia, give me Georgia once again by about, maybe not quite 2 touchdowns, but about 9, 10 points. 9.5, 9 and a hook, as we say in the gambling biz.
Ooh, okay. Bill, let's start with Pittsburgh and Michigan State.
You mean Don?
Wait.
Don.
Did you just ask me about that game?
Yeah.
Oh, Don. Yes, right.
Yeah, Bill and I look so much alike. I understand the confusion. But
I don't see color.
That's one of my favorite lies that people say.
Apparently not. Okay. Well, I'm wearing a white T-shirt. So
there we go.
Okay.
Yeah, you still like T-shirt.
I'm gonna go with Michigan State on this one. I think just playing, in the Big Ten gives them a little bit of an edge. So I'll go with Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, with Michigan State. Probably under 10 points. I think it'll be a good game. That might be one of the better games to watch, actually.
Yep.
I'm going to go Michigan State.
And, of course, the Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl. Who you got, Don?
Bama will win that one. I think Cincinnati will keep it close till about midway through the third quarter, and I think Alabama is going to start, applying the whoop ass on them. So, yeah, I could see Alabama pulling away late in the fourth quarter, third and fourth quarter. Orange Bowl, I'm going to go against Bill on this one. I think Michigan's going to pull the upset. I've been hearing about.
I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong. I like that.
Yeah, I've been hearing so much about Georgia this, Georgia that. When they got it against Alabama, they looked very
beatable.
Yes, they didn't seem like they looked like they had more than just kryptonite to be allergic to. I do think that Michigan. Okay, let me back up. On paper, I think Georgia probably is a better team than Michigan, but I think Michigan, they're what I call a team full of believers. They believe in what they're doing. Their motors are running. I think they're confident. They're coming off that still off that big win against Ohio State, and then they pretty much just killed Iowa. Whereas Georgia is coming off that beat down by Alabama, and I just think Michigan's going to win. A lot of it just based on the confidence that they can actually do it.
Ooh, that Michigan State defense Michigan defense against Alabama offense. I'd like to see that Don, New Year's Day, the Fiesta Bowl, Oklahoma State against Notre Dame, and the Sugar Bowl, Ole Miss against Baylor.
I'm going to go with Notre Dame. Not because I want to, because I love Gundy and I love Oklahoma State. But if you look
now, Don, we're not going to ask you to drive to Oklahoma. We're just going to ask you to watch that.
But if you look at the history of Oklahoma State, they do not win in dome stadiums. I know when Austin was playing for them, they got beat by Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. They got beat by Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl. They got beat by Florida State in the what was it called, the Avocare opening game in September in Houston in the Dome Stadium. So Oklahoma State doesn't win in Dome Stadium. In the Fiesta Bowl, they play that in the Dome Stadium.
Yes, they do.
So I got to go Notre Dame just based on past history.
And Ole Miss versus Baylor.
Ole Miss is going to kill Baylor.
Bill, your thoughts on these last two games? Oklahoma State versus Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl, and Ole Miss versus Baylor in the Sugar Bowl.
So I agree with Don a lot, but I'm definitely disagreeing with Don here. I don't think that that's going to be a slaughter. Once again, give me Baylor. Baylor's defense, and people like to make jokes about Big 12 defense, but Baylor's defense is real. And so as is Oklahoma State. Like, even though the Big 12 gets a knock for defenses, Oklahoma State's defense is a really good defense, and Baylor's is a pretty darn good defense. So I'm going to differ with him. I think that Notre Dame, this is the game that I think is going to be a real interesting back and like a tight game, like a 3-point game, 2.5. I think the line on this game might be 2.5. But I'm going to take Oklahoma State, and I'm going to take Baylor. The two Big 12 teams.
All right. Okay. Well, guys, let's.
And Bill, one thing, Bill. I hope you're right.
Yes.
I hope I'm wrong.
Right, just like guys, like you said about the other game. Yes, right. Like I said about the other game. Yes, I hope the same thing as well. Yes.
Don, does your nephew listen to the podcast?
Unfortunately, no. He's in the medical field,
Okay.
and he gets out of surgery usually around 7:30, and he gets a bite to eat. And by the time he gets home, he just he goes and.
I was just wondering, how you might feel about you picking against his alma mater there, right?
Oh, there's games where he picks against them also, so I'm not gonna sweat it. When you're playing, you have to be a believer, but when you get out and you get to be a little bit more honest, and so.
Don, speaking of honesty, we knew it was just a matter of time, but Steph finally broke the record in the right there in Madison Square Garden. He had Reggie Miller there, and of course the man himself. So, Don, how long do you think this can go on? I mean, he's already got 2,974 plus whatever he's put up, counting last night. So I would say, just another 3 to 5 years of peak shooting, maybe. But Don, what are you setting that number at?
I would have no idea about the numbers of threes that people can make. But I do agree with this. He will have about probably 4 or 5 years of still being able to knock him down. So I guess just watch that number rise. But I couldn't come up with the number right off the top of my head. Sorry. But I will say this. I need to go grade some papers and take care of some I got to fill out some grades, get on a computer and start entering some stuff. But it was good being with y'all tonight. And I'm going to leave you with this. If you want to see some good football, I'm sure y'all all have like the Fox Sports Network, right?
Yep.
Okay, Saturday is the 6A championships for Texas high school football being played in Arlington, Jerry's World. Austin Westlake is one of the top teams in the nation. Their quarterback going to Clemson, Cade Klubenek. He is the number 1 rated quarterback in this recruiting cycle.
Yep.
Westlake is a school that gave us Drew Brees, Nick Foles, Sam Ehlinger.
Yeah.
And now
some others.
Yeah, so their defensive end, a guy named Jake Burke, 6'7", 240, just signed with UT yesterday. He's a lacrosse player, believe it or not, and he's defensive end. They have 3 D1 linemen. One's going to Illinois, one's going to Texas, and the other one is a junior. So his name is TJ Shanahan. He's from Florida, moved in. He's in the top 3 linemen in the nation in his recruiting class. And so you're going to see some good football. But the other good game would be Galena Park North Shore versus Duncanville. And you're going to see all sorts of athletes. They played 3 years ago, and North Shore won on a Hail Mary that made ESPN. This is
North Shore where Vince Young went?
No, he went to Houston Madison.
Okay, Madison. Thank you,
yeah,
Madison.
but North Shore has their game, guys. Watch both of them. One's at 3, one's at 7. I'm going to be glued. I'm not making any plans for Saturday. That's why I need to get my grades done now, I guess.
All right, John. You have a great one, man. Good seeing you, and hey, we hope to see you in 2022.
All right. Good night.
All right, have a good one.
Take care, Don.
So, Bill,
Yes,
what's
sir.
what's your number for Steph?
You mean like when he's all done playing?
The record for threes, yeah.
Good God. I mean, he's going to hit another, I don't know, 5 to 800. I mean, let me think. How many does he make per year? So he probably makes, no, I'm low, right? Because he makes like 300 per year, right? So if he makes about 300 per year and he plays another 5 years, then that's like another between 12 and 1,500 more threes. God in heaven. It's a number. It's a huge number, and a number that we don't know if anyone will ever touch again. I mean, I'm not saying anything that people don't already know. Steph Curry is amazing. Steph Curry is a person who's changed basketball probably forever. Probably forever, James. I mean, you can watch 8th graders pulling up from 31 feet, knocking them down. Well, missing too, but knocking them down sometimes. 31 feet. Like 8th graders didn't know you could shoot from 31 feet 10 years ago, Don, right? The only time you saw 8th graders shooting from 31 feet is if they realized that the clock was expiring. I mean, the game has probably forever been changed by Wardell Stephen Curry, right? The game will probably never be the same again. So, I mean, his number is whatever number he wants to be, going to be. Because if he's willing to keep playing after he's no longer a full-time starter, which I don't think he is, but if he's willing to become a guy who's just a designated shooter, right, who plays, 14 minutes a game, he could play till he's in his 40s if he wanted to. If he's no longer willing to be a full-time starter now, I don't think that's probably what he was willing to do. But if he's willing to, he could probably put up another couple of thousand. I mean, maybe a couple of thousand, but yeah, well over 1,000 threes, over 1,500. Yeah, he could get close to 2,000 more threes if he really, really wanted to. That's a crazy thought, but he could if he was willing to play. Like I said, he has another 3 or so years.
My thought is this, Bill. If he plays for another 7 years at the most,
God.
at the very most, I'm saying that by 2025, Las Vegas will set that number, the over under at 5,000. Remember, he's only 20. He's only 2,100 away now. I mean, I know it sounds funny, but he's only 2,100.
Right. If you're Ben Simmons, that number is more than 2,000 away from the number you'll ever hit. But yes, it is. It is entirely possible if he decides to play that long. And once again, he would no longer be a full-time starter. If he's willing to play as a part-time player, if he's willing to be a glue guy, as I love to say, a guy who comes off the bench, if he's willing to do that, yeah, he could play a very long time because you don't lose your shot. You lose your ability to, play defense. You lose your ability to run the floor. You lose your ability to, to play day games after night, matinee games after night game. That's what you lose. You don't lose your shot. Ray Allen could hit threes right now today, wherever he is, whatever he's doing. That's not what's left.
No,
Reggie Miller could knock down. If you were to put Reggie Miller on that left elbow and said take 12 threes, he would knock 8 of them down, Jay. Like that part, that's not the part that leaves.
No, that's not the part that leaves you. No. I know that you have been one that have kind of steadily been in my corner about this being a non-fit, this Russell Westbrook thing, but I got to keep saying it. Even though they've won their last couple back with LeBron, But still, last night between AD and what Russell, we had 10 turnovers. Can we keep making, and now it actually seems, and maybe you can call me a Westbrook hater or whatever, but it seems to me that with the addition of Westbrook, all of a sudden AD has lost his game.
I don't know. I mean, once again, as the old saying goes, what is it? The term I'm using.
Only as good as your weakest link.
Wait, hold on. Not coincidence. What's the term? Something. It's not causation, but yes, it is. Coincidence is not causation. Both things you're saying are true, but I don't attribute them. I don't think they're linked. I don't think they're directly connected. Is what I'm saying. Anthony Davis has always been a very, very, very talented player, but a guy that we're not used to seeing be great for extended periods of time, whether it be due to injury, whether it be due to just good old-fashioned inconsistency, whether it be for whatever reason. He's a guy that has really good stretches. But because he's not LeBron and he's not Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's not one of those guys that you see be great 70 out of 82 games. That's never been him, even at his very best. He was a guy that would give you 40 or 50 great games and another 10 to 15 good games and a couple of games that were kind of like, And we discussed this before. What kind of player is Brian Westbrook? You may say he's a point guard, right? And I guess you can call him a point guard, but he's not really a point guard. He's really a very small forward who handles the ball well and can pass, right? In fact, he passes extremely well. Don't get me wrong. But he's not a guy, he's not a classic pass-first point guard. He's a really good passer, an effective passer. But post-entry passing is kind of a dying art, James, right? I mean, some guys are still good at it. Rookie Rubio is a good post-entry passer. There's guys who are still good at it.
Well, there's very few teams that use the post-entry effectively now anyway. I mean, when you really think about it, your bigs don't play down low anymore.
Right. That's part of it. Right. Exactly. Like, to whom would I be making this post-entry pass anyway?
Right.
Right. Exactly. Even if I wanted to do it, to whom would this be going? I get that 100%. So, yeah, the point I'm making or attempting to make is that I think he's a good player. I think he's a very good player. But he's not the kind of player that automatically makes your bigs better, because the way he plays basketball works really well if you have a very free-flowing kind of offense. And it's sort of the opposite of basketball, right? We have watched, you and I both have watched in real time the death of basketball as we once used to know it, right? The basketball you and I grew up watching, where you would put Artis Gilmore on the low block, or Nate Thurman on the low block, or Bob Lanier on the low block, or Kareem on the low block, or whoever you want to name or throw out there. And then they would either get a good shot or pass it back out to the shooters, right? Remember those days when that's how you would open your offense, by getting the ball into the post and then having cutters and guys, moving around, and either you get a great shot from your guy on the low block, or he passes it out, especially if he's a really good passer, right? Passes it back out and you get a good shot that way. That's how offenses, almost every offense in the league used to work. Not to me, not that long ago, but I guess if you're
Robert Ory. I mean, those guys made, they made their living that way.
Oh, yes. I mean, as recently as Shaq, right? That wasn't that long. As recently as Shaq, as recently as like David Robinson, that's how offenses still worked, right? And then all that went away, James. All that went away. And so now, the way basketball's played now, you may or may not ever have a post-entry pass the way you and I grew up watching basketball, right? The ball may make its way into the post, but not the classic post-entry, that little bounce pass where you beat your man a little bit as the point guard and you threaten the defense just enough to make somebody react out to you, and you boom, you kick it into your post player, who either gets off that little quick turnaround, or maybe he has a great drop step move and he gets even like a dunk out of it. Who knows? But that was how offenses wanted to score, like first. That was our first option. And then kicking it back out and getting a 2 or a 3 was really your second option, right?
Yeah, you don't.
And maybe
you
you
don't
have
even,
cutters and slashers who get layups, and that's really your third option, right? That's how basketball used to work.
You don't even throw it into the low post now unless you expect him to pass it back out to you again.
Right.
So yeah, the game has definitely changed. But speaking of change, we've heard of a lot of teams, that might be interested in Kyrie. What kind of fit do you think he'd make with the Mavericks?
Well, they kind of have somebody who runs their offense. Or I don't know. I mean, that's a challenging one to see me. They already have, and he doesn't play point guard, but they have a guy who runs their offense. They have a captain of their offense in Luka Doncic. And Luka Doncic makes everything happen for them on offense. So either Luka would have to take a little bit of a back seat, which maybe he's willing to do, or Kyrie would have to take a little bit of a back seat, which I don't know, James. That's a tough one. That's not the team that popped in my mind first. I'll put it that way.
It's not the first team that popped in my mind, but it was a program. I mean, it was a question that was going around some circles today, and I thought about it, and I'm like, I thought like you, either somebody would have to take a kind of a backseat here, but hey, LeBron has done it. And basically, even KD would probably do it if he came back to the Nets. I mean, the Nets, especially on certain nights when Kyrie just got in his mind that he's the best player on the planet, and so forth and so on. But it would be challenging. But would he fit? Now that the Mavericks have gotten rid of now that Luka has sent Rick Carlisle out of town on a rail.
Right. I mean, like I said,
he didn't have a lot of good things to say about Rick.
Right. I mean, it would take Luka deciding to play the game slightly differently. I mean, the place where he makes the most sense amongst contenders. I mean, he could fit on any bad team because any bad team's always looking for good players. But the contender where he makes the most sense is Milwaukee. Now, I don't think they want him. I don't think they make it work there. But that's the only real contender where they don't have a dominant, right? A dominant guy, a ball dominant guy, a guy who is your great ball handler.
Giannis knows that the world is round. It would not fit there.
Well, that's what I'm pointing out, is that's a team, that's one of the few teams that really runs its offense through the number 5. That might be the only team really in the NBA where they truly still run their offense through the number 5 spot. Everybody else sprinkles their big man in. Even a team like Philadelphia, where he's probably the best player on their team, they don't really run everything through their big man. Well, I mean, this year, I guess, more than in the past because Ben Simmons and whatever. But he makes, amongst the contenders, he makes the most sense there, to me. If you're talking about contenders. Now, once again, there's a lot of bad teams where you could send Kyrie and it makes sense. But amongst good teams, the one where he makes the most sense, to me, is the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm not saying it makes the most sense culture-wise. I don't know if there is a culture where Kyrie really makes sense.
No, I that's what I was thinking. Where would he fit? Especially culture-wise. Where else would he? And I can't think of a contender that would want him in the locker room. But that.
All right. Well, now we're agreeing about that part. I'm saying in terms of just basketball, the one where he makes the most sense, just in terms of pure basketball. Because they have guys who can play the point and do play the point. Don't get me wrong, but none of them are Kyrie Irving, right? I mean, he would be a significant upgrade over everyone who's played point for the Bucks since what, the 80s? I mean, I'm trying to think.
That's how long. That's how far you'd have to go back. But Let's talk a little bit about the NFL since we're watching Thursday night football. This is the last Thursday night game of the year, I
Yep,
believe.
of the year.
And we have Saturday games this week and next week, I believe. So schedules changed a little bit. But before we talk about those things, something happened last night. Night before last, I went to bed and the Jags, Urban Meyer was the coach of the Jags, and I woke up yesterday and he was out.
Yeah. Well,
And now
yeah.
they're talking about it's very interesting about the way how we talked about Urban Meyer as a hire and the way we talk about him as a fire. Now, I believe we all on this program talked about this was an experiment that was doomed to failure.
Yes.
And it was because of the mindset of the coach, Urban Meyer himself. And to me, this, whether I would tend to believe the rumor that he did kick the kicker just because he's Urban Meyer, but that I'm sure the incident where the team after a loss goes back and he stays to celebrate it. There are
Celebrate.
is
that what is that what the kids are calling it now, James? Celebrate it.
The bringing Tim Tebow in. Come on, come on. So there are numerous instances that we could probably point to. But when were you sure, other than of course that we talked about on this show initially at the hire? But when did you know that this experiment was doomed to failure?
Well, as you said, from the hire. And people like to say, well, college coaches don't work. Well, almost every single coach in the NFL as coach at the collegiate level. Maybe not as a head coach, but as an assistant. So I think that's kind of a silly thing to say. But arrogant autocrats, no matter whether they came from the NFL or high school or college or whatever, don't tend to work. And the only way they do work is they win a lot and they win immediately. Because guys aren't going to buy into you being an arrogant autocrat if you aren't winning, right? And yes, I think we all saw this coming. It's one of those things where everybody's like, yeah, I saw this coming. There were maybe a handful of people who somehow thought this was going to be great. Here's what I will say. And I've been watching Urban Meyer's career since he was a wide receiver coach, right? Obviously he coached for Bill Snyder. He coached for not Lou Holtz, but who replaced Holtz in Notre Dame? Or maybe it was Holtz. He might have coached under Holtz. I take it back. I need to coach for Lou Holtz in Notre Dame. My point is I've been following his career for a long time. He's been – I remember when he was the hot young coach, right, being talked about for jobs. Followed him from his career at Bowling Green State University, from there to Utah, from Utah, right, to Florida to talking about football on television, and then from that to Ohio State, and from Ohio State to where he is now after, once again, one more year of talking about football for money on television. Things I've noticed about him. One is he's usually very good at putting together a staff. For whatever reason, the staff he has here, I'll just use his own words, was apparently not up to par. He kept calling them losers and asking what have they ever won and, all this kind of stuff. So
he picked them. He picked
them.
Yes.
Yes, 100%. These are his guys, but he doesn't like them apparently or whatever. Not a fan. It's so odd to me. They hear him talking about his own coaching guy. But he's always been a kind of throw you under the bus kind of guy. He's always been a little bit, of a guy who's always been willing to share the blame. Not always share the credit, but also to share the blame, right? Some of the things that you guys say about officers apply to Urban Meyer. He definitely has what I used to call ring knocker syndrome, right? He definitely has that, I graduated from my top of my class at West Point kind of thing going on. But he was a successful coach at a bunch of different places. I get why people tried to buy into him, but I really saw this one coming, as a lot of people did. I don't think he understood, one, how hard it is to win in a place where the talent level is pretty much, maybe not, I won't say even, but close, very close to even across the board. Two, these guys aren't just going to run through a brick wall for you because of your reputation or your name or all the winning you did someplace else. They don't care about any of that, right? What are you going to do here? They're all going to take a take and see standpoint. They're all going to say, show me something. None of them would be like, oh, Urban Meyer, I can't wait to play for Urban Meyer. It's the NFL. Nobody, they watch college football. They played college football. They're college football fans, but they're not awed by Urban Meyer. None of them, not one of them, are awed by Urban Meyer. And then last but not least, similar to with Spurrier or a lot of other guys, the work, not that you don't work super hard as a college football coach. Don't get me wrong. Those guys work super hard. But the level of work, the amount of work, the detail demanded of you at this level is another notch or two higher. And the guys who've had success met that challenge. But Urban Meyer was a guy that seemed to me to be looking to enter into a somewhat gentlemanly semi-retirement. And now he really can't because they fired him. He gets to keep a very large chunk of that contract. He's going to be just fine. So while his feelings might be hurt, his bank account is not.
His bank account was never going to be hurting. The family might have wanted to kick his ass out of the house, but it had nothing to do with, I think that may have had more to do with him coming back than anything else. The wife told him, I don't care where you go, but you got to get the hell out of here. We talked about Aaron Rodgers, and I think, I've always fantasized, like, even though he's not particularly my cup of tea, but I think, that he could get us to the Super Bowl. When I hear rumors about him wanting to come to the Steelers or whatever, it does my heart very good. But we also talk about this fractured relationship that he has with the Green Bay front office. Do you think winning a Super Bowl would keep Aaron in Green Bay, Bill?
I think it is a reparable situation. I think he wants what basically every football player wants. He wants a multi-year commitment. If they say to him, Aaron, 3 years, 29 point whatever million per year, so a total of, over that 3 year period, 88 point something million, 100% guaranteed. He signs it right now today, right? And it's a bargain, right? He could have gotten more on the open market, but he signs that sucker right away and finishes his career right there in Green Bay. Now the problem is you drafted Jordan Love, but I mean, I want to tell you that's not my fault that you drafted Jordan Love. But either you see what the market is for Jordan Love and you maybe consider moving him, or he gets Aaron Rodgers, right? He gets to watch the other guy play for the next couple of years. Either way, you got a decision to make. But if they make the right decision, and I'm convinced the right decision is to go ahead and throw that 3-year contract out there to see if Aaron Charles Rodgers, because I don't think he really truly wants to leave, but he does definitely want them to make a multi-year commitment to him.
Do you think that right now the MVP race is between Brady and Rodgers?
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but I think that both of them are in the top 5. I would say there are some other players that should at least be mentioned in that, including some defensive players. But I know people don't like to mention defensive players for most valuable player. But there are defensive players who've had that kind of year. I mean, T.J. Watt, unfortunately, got hurt, but that was the guy that was playing at to my mind, a MVP type year was being had by him. A lot of people started talking even about Micah Parsons as a rookie being a guy that's a contender for the award. But yes, I would say those two deserve mention. I would say that it'll be difficult in my mind not to mention a couple other guys who are having, historic or historic-ish, seasons. I think that Jonathan Taylor is having a great year at Indianapolis, and he's helping them to not lean too hard on Carson Wentz, which is sort of the secret to Carson Wentz being good, is not to.
We'll be talking about those guys in a moment. We'll be
Okay.
talking about those guys.
So my short answer is they both will definitely be in the mix, but no, you can't just automatically hand it to one or the other one, in my mind.
Yeah, well, the Cardinals, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about them kind of being a shoe-in, but these last couple games, it's been kind of a head-scratcher. Now we hear they've lost DeAndre Hopkins for the rest of the regular season, we really haven't heard a lot from the wide receivers since the first 5 weeks of the season, maybe 6 weeks of the season. How concerned are you about that wide receiving core and the play of Kyler Murray these last the last month?
I am not concerned. While I don't think they're going to make a super deep playoff run, I do believe that this team is going to either end up, number one in their, division, or number two in their division. They still are one of the best teams in the NFL. I just don't trust them in the playoffs yet. I need to see them show me that they can get certain things done in the playoffs. But it's a very well-rounded team. They have a tremendous offense and a very good defense. Their special teams are above average. Like, there's no thing you point to weakness on and say, oh, my God, they're terrible at X. No, there's no they're terrible at X anywhere on that team. So I can't think of a legitimate reason why they wouldn't still, obviously make the playoffs. I think it win at least one playoff game is what I think is going to happen for them.
Oh, okay, so they make the playoffs, they win a game, and then they're out the second round?
Yep. I mean, I think they eventually run into either Tampa Bay or Green Bay or whatever and get eliminated.
Okay. You were talking about the Colts a little bit earlier. So I got a couple teams I'm going to throw at you here, including, let me see. Okay. The Bills, the Broncos, the Bungles, the Colts, the Clowns. They're all 7-6.
Mm-hmm.
Which of those teams do you think is most likely to go on a 3-1 run or make the playoffs if they go 2-2?
Well, in both scenarios, that team is probably the Bills. The Bills have only one team really to fear in their own division, and that's obviously the Patriots. The other two teams in their division are, what's the word I'm looking for? Bad. So they don't have really anything else to worry about division-wise. And in their games outside of, the division, and sometimes even some cases outside the conference, are games that are, at the very least, winnable, right? I won't call their schedule easy. I mean, it's a challenging schedule.
Isn't what we thought about their last three out of 4 games? That those were all winnable games?
Well, not what I thought, no. I mean, so when you say we, no. But I do believe that they're about to go on a little bit of a run in terms of winning, starting to win some games. But I don't, once again, just like we sort of talked about with Arizona, I think they're still a year away from being a team that makes a deep run into the playoffs. I think they're a team that, once again, wins a playoff game and then gets eliminated.
Are you eliminating the Clowns and the Bungles?
No, but you asked me which one was the most likely.
Yeah,
that was the most.
Yeah, okay.
The other teams are slightly less likely. I would say Bengals are the second most likely in that scenario, and then the Browns are the third most likely.
So then you are eliminating your Colts.
I won't go so far as to say I'm eliminating the Colts, but they're the fourth most likely of the list.
Oh, they're 4 out of 5, Bill. That's kind of spells elimination to me. Uh, let's see. Jimmy G, do you think he's bought himself another year in San Francisco?
Well, I mean, I don't think he ever had lost that other year. I think they always were planning to play the long game with Trey Lance. Now, Trey Lance could show up in camp, next season and be amazing. And then, now they're trying to deal Jimmy Garoppolo at that point. It's all contingent upon how quickly Trey Lance starts to look like a franchise-level quarterback. If that happens very quickly, then he's moving on very quickly. If that takes most of a year or all of a year, then he has a job. There's only 32 teams in the NFL, and not all of them need quarterbacks. Some of them do, including our beloved Steelers. But, you look at those teams that didn't already take the young quarterback they think might be their future. And so that leaves you with a list of teams that are possible landing spots for Garoppolo, right? As you mentioned, obviously Pittsburgh came to my mind right away.
Is Jimmy G's game suited to the Steelers? Or is better yet, is it suited to Mike Tomlin?
Well, to me, if he shows he can make good decisions and not turn the ball over, he can be suited to a whole lot of teams because there are teams that don't get that, right? We always talk about, the basics, the things you have to have. Does your quarterback make good decisions? Is your quarterback accurate? Does your quarterback avoid making the mistake that might lose you the game, right? Those are the things you need first, and Garoppolo has those things. Now, is he a spectacular, rare athlete and oh my God, did you see that thrower of the football? Well, not usually, no. Like, he's not that. He's essentially a much better looking Kirk Cousins in a lot of ways. So you have to build a team in such a way that a guy whose strengths as a quarterback are 12 to 18 yards down the field. And if you know that, guess what that means? Also, the opponent knows that. So that's the real issue. And they have a good enough running attack, obviously. Both teams have good running attacks, but they have a good enough running attack that you should be able to get some business done there, which hopefully will open things up for the passing game. But yes, that is my response.
Now, you also, I'm kind of thinking of some of the things that you were mentioning when we're talking about the Steelers here. And, of course, my opinion is that Big Ben should go. But then, of course, I also come across that question that you always ask. If not Big Ben, who?
Yeah, because they don't have that guy yet, right?
Right. Because it's certainly,
you look at that quarterback room.
It's certainly not Mason Rudolph.
No, sir.
Dwayne Haskins, I haven't. I don't believe it's him, but I haven't really seen a big enough sample.
I believe the quarterback of the future for the Steelers is not on their roster yet.
Right.
So whether it be,
but you've also talked this year about how in past years we've had a plethora of quarterbacks to look at. This year, not so much. Have you seen a quarterback that you think, and I know you look at the draft and you look at different things like that, have you seen a quarterback while you're looking at your possible draft boards, have you seen one that would possibly fit the Steelers? And who would it be?
Sure. So, I think we've all talked about wanting to move on from Ben Roethlisberger. And yes, there are some quarterbacks I really like. And, I think earlier today, Carson Strong officially declared for the draft. His medicals will be the big question for him. He's had some injuries, but he's tough. He's smart. He's accurate. He can really throw the ball deep outside the numbers and has proven it in the last couple of years. I would love to see him end up in Chicago and, obviously sign him to the longest possible rookie deal you can, in my opinion. But there's only a couple of sort of slam dunk first rounders who I think will definitely work out. And we'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong. But there's some Florida talent as always. And that means that, when you look at some of the schools out there that have players who are coming out, I mean, a lot of people get excited about Matt Corral. That's a guy that I think has a chance, but I'm not as sold on him as I am on Strong. It'll be interesting to see sort of what big draft, right? The ones from 3-letter networks and 4-letter networks, whatever, have to say about this. But right now, for the Steelers, the person I'm planting my flag in is Carson Strong.
Okay. Carson Strong. We'll see. Well, Bill, it's one of those times when, it's sad to see things go. But we've had a great year, great sports year.
Yep.
If you had to pick one sports event from 2021 that provided you with the most excitement or the most euphoria as a sports fan, what would it be?
Wow, that's a great question, James. I'm going to go with one very recent one, a very interesting one, and I guess this is a sporting event, but the National Signing Day. Now, National Signing Day is always exciting and always interesting, but when you add to what the full-on, like we're now in the real full-on, for real transfer portal, and you add to that to the normal stuff, and you add to that Travis Hunter, you add to that Mark Pope, transferring from Miami. I mean, we saw 3, 4/5-star types end up at HBCUs either. And then and Howard just signed what's his name, Maker, right? Who was a 5-star basketball player. So I'm always going to be excited and happy when great things happen for HBCUs because, well, one, they're still where most of our Black professionals in certain fields come from, right? Even though lots of Black students go to predominantly white institutions, we still get so many of our graduates, particularly in sort of top-level positions and top-level fields, coming from HBCUs. 45% of our dentists, still the majority of our lawyers, the majority of our people, and doctors still are coming from HBCUs. So, it's an incredibly important thing to see HBCUs thrive and survive and be successful. And to see in this modern sort of football environment, to see that some of the coaches that HBCUs are bringing in 4 and 5 stars, 4 and 5 stars. Obviously more 4s than 5s, and even 4s are rare, but they're getting some of them. And of course, the number 2 recruit, or some people say number 1 recruit in this entire class sitting up at HBCU is tremendously important, and I think it's beautiful. So that I mean, though it's not a sporting event, I guess in the traditional sense, I loved it, and I thought it was thrilling.
It is. Well, no, I know you have always. There's something to talk about. So, what would be your final thought for our audience for 2021?
Sure. So we now live in an environment, and of course, a lot of people have gotten very upset. Someone said, "Oh, this is the death of college football." Man, we had people literally dying in college football, scores of them at one point. So finally in 1905, Teddy Roosevelt forced the meeting of the top football schools and their, I guess the term athletic director wasn't even being used yet. So I guess these were like presidents and provosts and things like that who were at that particular meeting. But we've football survived including college, has survived worse than players being able to benefit from their own name, image, and likeness. I just think that when people get all up in arms about, oh, well, this is it. This is going to be the thing that ruins college football. Okay, whatever. The current environment from what Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, is getting done, doing at Jackson State, and what other coaches, like it's not just Jackson State, are doing in terms of helping their programs to climb back to prominence. Because at one point, some of the best football in the world, American tackle football, at least, in the world was being played at HBCUs. People may not know that. People might forget that. People might not know that the school that produced the most number of combined players starting in a Super Bowl between the two teams facing each other wasn't Notre Dame or Texas or USC or Alabama or LSU. It was, in fact, an HBCU that doesn't even have a football program anymore, Maryland Eastern Shore, in Super Bowl III. They hold the record for the most starters in a Super Bowl from one college program. Maryland Eastern Shore, at that point still called Maryland State, which doesn't even have a football program anymore. So my hope is that in addition to the rich sort of getting richer at the HBCU level, where Southern and Jackson State and a couple other programs are becoming an attractive landing spot for 3- and 4-star, and in one case, 5-star recruits coming out of high school, and many 3- and 4-star recruits transferring. I also hope that this eventually, the largesse, the trickle, I'll call it trickle around process, right? Not so much up or down, but trickle around process will help other HBCUs, including maybe even Maryland Eastern Shore, to bring back their football program, because it hurts a little bit, even though it probably would be a slight injury to my home school, right, in Norfolk State, where I was a student, to have Maryland Eastern Shore come back because we recruit a lot of the same areas. I would love to see what's happening in terms of the money and attention eventually make it so that Maryland Eastern Shore could bring back football. When HBCUs thrive, are successful, and in addition to what they do in terms of sports, what they do in terms of, every part of our society and culture, politics, medicine, religion, entertainment, pick one. If HBCUs are surviving and thriving, it benefits not only Black America, but America as a whole. When Black America does better, America does better, right? We are Americans when it's all said and done. And once we are able to have a healthier bunch of HBCUs, it means we have a healthier Black community and a healthier America. That is my final thought.
Well, hey, enjoyed talking with you all 2021. Hope to have a lot of conversations in 22. And
Yes, sir.
I will see you soon, maybe Saturday, if we
Maybe
get
Saturday.
depending on how many we can get in. I know Demetrius might be back. Mike is having holiday company, but if nothing else, we'll do our last show Saturday, and I'll see you then.
Yes, sir. I look very much forward to it.
Have a great night, everyone. We'll see you in 2022.
Yep.